your financial life. This is not a modern productivity concept. It is not a self-help framework invented by a business coach. It is a divinely engineered economic cycle embedded in the Torah over 3,000 years ago, practiced by Jewish communities through every economic era in human history. And it is the single most powerful financial timing principle most people have never heard of. The 7-year cycle is not superstition. It is not religious ceremony disconnected from practical reality. It is a battle-tested financial rhythm that has shaped how the most financially resilient communities in recorded history time their debt decisions, their investment decisions, their release decisions, and their accumulation decisions. By the end of this teaching, you will understand the full architecture of the 7-year cycle and how to apply it to every major financial move you face. A prayer for financial wisdom and divine timing waits for you at the close. Do not leave before it arrives. Here is how most people make major financial decisions. When the opportunity presents itself, when the emotion is high, when the salesperson is persuasive, when everyone around them is doing the same thing, when the market is rising and confidence feels like wisdom, when the fear of missing out becomes louder than the voice of discipline. There is no framework, no cycle, no timing architecture, just reaction. And reaction-based financial decision-making is the reason most people find themselves in debt they did not plan for, in investments they do not understand, in obligations they cannot escape, and in financial patterns that repeat across their entire adult life without ever producing the breakthrough they have been waiting for. The ancient world understood something the modern financial system has systematically eliminated from financial education. Timing is not accidental. Seasons are not random. Economic cycles are not invented by economists. They are embedded in the structure of reality by the one who designed reality. And the person who learns to move with the cycle, rather than against it, builds wealth in a fundamentally different way from the person who reacts to each moment as if it arrived without context. Leviticus 25 contains the architectural blueprint, and it has been operating in every economy since it was written. The 7-year cycle in the Torah has 2 primary expressions. The first is the Shemitah, the sabbatical year. Every 7 years, the land was to rest. Debts were to be released. Slaves were to be freed. The economic accumulation of 6 years was interrupted by a divinely mandated reset that prevented the permanent concentration of wealth and the permanent entrenchment of poverty. The second is the Jubilee, the 50th year, the year after 7 cycles of 7. The year of complete restoration. Land returned to its original families. Generational losses reversed. The ultimate reset, operating on the longer cycle. But the financial wisdom the Jewish community extracted from this structure goes far beyond the religious observance. It became a timing framework, a mental model for understanding where any given moment sits within a larger cycle, and making financial decisions accordingly. The 7-year cycle produced a specific financial posture for each of its stages, and that posture is what this teaching unpacks. Years 1 through 3. The building years. The first 3 years of any 7-year cycle are the building years. This is the season for planting, for starting, for establishing the foundations of what the next several years will produce. Proverbs 24:27 frames the sequence. Put your outdoor work in order and get your fields ready. After that, build your house. The field before the house. The productive capacity before the personal comfort. The investment before the lifestyle. In the ancient agricultural cycle, the first 3 years after entering a new land were years of planting without harvest. Leviticus 19:23 makes this explicit. The fruit of the first 3 years was considered uncircumcised, not for eating. The tree was being established. The root system was being built. The harvest would come, but not yet. The financial application is precise. The early years of any new financial season, a new business, a new career, a new investment, a new family, are years for building the infrastructure, not extracting the return. The person who demands harvest in the planting years destroys the root system that would have produced it. The Jewish business community understood this as a structural reality, not a discipline preference. New ventures required patient capital for 3 years before meaningful return was expected. The investor who demanded results in year 1 was not being prudent. They were destroying what patient building would have produced. Years 1 through 3. Plant with patience. Build the root system. Do not demand harvest from what has not yet established. Years 4 through 6. The harvest years. The 4th year in the agricultural cycle was the year of first fruits. The first harvest dedicated entirely to the Lord. Leviticus 19:24. The 4th year's fruit was holy, offered before the farmer ate any of it. Then years 5 and 6 were the full harvest years. The field established, the tree mature, the return now flowing consistently from the root system built in years 1 through 3. This is the season for acceleration, for maximizing the return that the building years made possible, for expanding what has been established rather than starting new things from scratch. Proverbs 10:5 captures the harvest posture. He who gathers crops in summer is a prudent son, but he who sleeps during harvest is a disgraceful son. The harvest season is not the time for rest. It is the time for aggressive gathering. The window of maximum productivity is real, and it closes. The person who is passive during the harvest years loses what the building years earned. Jewish wealth-building families historically understood years 4 through 6 as the accumulation-acceleration window. This was the time to maximize return on established ventures, to expand proven streams, to capture the full output of what patient building had produced. This is also the season for building the reserve, not spending the harvest, storing it, because year 7 is coming. Years 4 through 6, harvest aggressively, maximize the return on what was built, store the surplus, because the reset is approaching. Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or your country in the comments below, because this teaching is landing across every time zone today, and this community needs to know how far the 7-year cycle wisdom has traveled. Tell us where you are. Year 7, the release year. Year 7 is the most counterintuitive financial instruction in the entire Torah. Stop. Release. Let go. Deuteronomy 15:1-2 states it without negotiation. At the end of every 7 years you must cancel debts. This is how it is to be done. Every creditor shall cancel any loan they have made to a fellow Israelite. They shall not require payment from anyone among their people, because the Lord's time for canceling debts has been proclaimed. The Lord's time for canceling debts. This is not a suggestion. It is a divine appointment with release. A built-in mechanism that prevented debt from becoming permanent bondage and prevented economic imbalance from compounding indefinitely. But the financial wisdom the Jewish community extracted from year 7 goes far beyond the debt release. Year 7 became the year of strategic assessment, the year of letting go of what was not working, the year of releasing obligations that had become burdens rather than engines, the year of honest inventory before the next cycle began. Solomon addressed this in Proverbs 3:27-28. Do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it is in your power to act. Do not say to your neighbor, come back tomorrow, and I will give it when you now have it with you. The release of year 7 was not passive, it was active. It required going to the person owed and releasing them. It required action, not just intention. The Jewish business community developed a sophisticated financial practice around this principle, called the prosbul, a legal instrument designed by Hillel to preserve lending during Shemitah years by transferring private loans to a court. Not to escape the principle of release, but to manage its application in a complex commercial economy. This is financial sophistication, not primitive religion. A community taking a divine architectural principle and applying it with precision to real economic conditions. Year 7, in the modern financial application. This is the year to release the debt you are carrying. The year to close the ventures that are draining rather than producing. The year to restructure obligations before beginning the next cycle. The year of honest inventory that clears the ground for what the next 7 years will build. The person who enters a new 7-year cycle carrying the unresolved weight of the previous one does not get the full building years. They spend years 1 through 3 of the new cycle managing the residue of the old one. The Jubilee, the 50th year. The Jubilee arrives after 7 cycles of 7, 50 years, the year of complete restoration. Leviticus 25:10. Consecrate the 50th year, and proclaim liberty throughout all the land to all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you. Each of you is to return to your family property and to your own clan. Return to your family property. The land that was sold under economic pressure, returned. The generational inheritance that was lost, restored. The long cycle completing its full arc. The Jubilee was the built-in mechanism against permanent generational poverty. No matter how badly a family's financial situation deteriorated across a 7-year cycle or several cycles, the Jubilee year was the reset that restored what was lost. The financial application for the modern community is the long view. The person operating with a 7-year cycle framework understands that any single cycle is not the whole story. A bad cycle does not permanently define the trajectory. The Jubilee principle says the long arc of financial history bends toward restoration for those who maintain the framework. This is why Jewish communities maintained generational financial resilience through persecution, exile, and systematic economic destruction. The framework was longer than any single disruption. The cycle would complete. The Jubilee would come. The restoration was built into the structure of the system. The 7-year cycle applied to your financial life today requires one foundational question. Where are you in the cycle right now? Not where the economy is, not where the stock market is, where you personally are in your own 7-year financial rhythm. If you are in years 1 through 3 of a new venture, a new career, a new financial season, stop demanding harvest. Your assignment is building. Patient, consistent, unglamorous building of the root system that years 4 through 6 will produce from. Any resource you extract from the building, years you are stealing from the harvest years. If you are in years 4 through 6, harvest aggressively. This is not the season for starting new things. This is the season for maximizing what was established, for expanding proven streams, for storing the surplus that year 7 will require you to be generous with. If you are approaching year 7, begin the assessment now. What debts are you carrying that need to be released before the next cycle begins? What ventures are draining your capacity that need to be honestly closed? What obligations have become weights rather than engines? The release of year 7 is not defeat. It is the clearing of the ground. Proverbs 21:5 frames the discipline behind the cycle. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. The 7-year cycle is the antidote to financial haste. It forces the long view. It prevents the demand for harvest in the planting years and the complacency of rest in the harvest years. The person who operates within the cycle makes major financial decisions differently from the person who reacts to each moment. They do not take on new debt in year 6 when the Shemitah approaches. They do not start new ventures in year 7 when the release cycle is active. They do not demand immediate return from what was planted 3 months ago. They understand where they are. They know what the season requires, and they act accordingly. If the 7-year cycle has given you a framework that changes how you see the timing of your financial life, if this ancient rhythm is making the present moment more navigable, subscribe to this channel now. Every week we uncover more of what Scripture has always contained about money, wealth, and timing. You should be here for the next teaching. Prayer. Close your eyes. Let the noise of the moment go quiet for just a breath. Father, we come before you as people who have been making major financial decisions without a framework, reacting to moments rather than moving with seasons, demanding harvest in planting years and resting in harvest years, carrying into new cycles the unresolved weight of old ones. Today we receive the architecture you designed into your word, the 7-year rhythm, the Shemitah, the Jubilee, the built-in wisdom of seasons that prevents permanent accumulation, permanent poverty, permanent bondage. Forgive us for the times we fought the cycle rather than learned from it, for the debts we carried past the 7th year rather than releasing, for the harvest we left in the field because we were passive when the window was open. Show us where we are in the cycle right now. Give us the discernment to know whether this is a planting season or a harvest season or a release season. Give us the patience to build in the building years.